The SETA A1, one of the understated cases shown off at CES this year, mostly down to its elegant front panel, but let's get some home truths out of the way. This one was sent over by SilverStone and it costs anything from £100, dollars, euros, what have you, upwards, and this better be good. So let's get into this. With slightly more premium cardboard than basic cases, and with that some close-cell foam, it's good to see the money's being spent to protect the asset. This sticker is possibly one of the most fragile stickers I've ever seen on something this expensive. I think we might need to break out the sticky stuff remover. Top I/O wise, we've got the usual dual USB 3.0 ports, power and reset buttons, and drive LED, but we've also got a combined mic and headphone jack, a little unusual, and a more premium Type-C port. Up top, there's room for up to a 240mm radiator with fans or a couple of 140mm fans. There's a standard rear setup with the addition of a vertical GPU mount with an extremely cleanly attached and supported tempered glass side panel with a secret mounting mechanism. We have seen this kind of linear hook before in cases of many prices, but not on many tempered glass panels, but whatever panel it's on, it's by far the best option. The base has a huge dual access filter, which is primarily for the power supply unit at the back, but it also could serve as an exhaust overflow or intake depending on positive or negative pressure setups, and the rubber pads of the feet can be shifted to expose the screw holding the feet in place. Back to that front panel, after a swift tug it's off, and we're either dealing with a very small case or those are some really big fans. Turns out it's the latter option, 200mm, 800 RPM, but only 3-pin fans. But either way, it should be nice and quiet. Unfortunately, SilverStone performed the cardinal sin of tethering the front panel to the case with wires. Luckily, they're side fixed rather than top fixed though, so it creates a hinge style effect. The front panel itself has a few notable details. There's a large internal filter that's a good 100mm shorter and 50mm thinner than the fans it's meant to serve. It's held in place with notches to one side and these rather small tabs to the other. They work, but it's not a very premium solution. Neither is the hot glue to the top left. The aluminium panel can be detached after removing a few screws. Later, this will be instrumental in understanding how large, low static pressure front fans may struggle to pull air through the smaller filtered opening available. There's not a huge amount of space between the blades and the filter, and with that, the filter and the front panel. At best, we've got 54 centimeters squared of intake area through the top and bottom combined of the front panel to feed 628 centimeters squared of fan area. Just to give you an idea. To support the large case, we've got some large 60cm fan wires, all 3-pin fans again. Not so bad for the larger, quieter front fans, but the smaller fans can get noisy when they go out of control. The back end of the front I/O is very mediocre for such an expensive case, but at least we've got some black connectors, and the leftmost being a Type-E connector for a Type-C port. Onto drives, there's a good array of storage options available. These multi-compatible drive cages are something I've not encountered before. You can use one for up to a 1 3.5-inch drive and 2 2.5-inch drives, or both stacked for 2 3.5-inch drives and 2 2.5-inch drives. Depending on its positions in the case, you can get up to 210mm of power supply unit space, which realistically means 180mm long power supply unit max. Parts box wise, we've got all the screws you might want, but no extra screws for fans, which you should get with extra fans that you buy on top. We've also got an ARGB control box and a pile of tweezers. Not those tweezers. But did I mention the front panel has ARGB? I don't know about you, but for such an elegant looking case, especially that front panel, I'm not really digging all this ARGB. I think it calls for a more simple backlight. As with a few ARGB control boxes I've seen, the reset button links up to the control box so you can flick through all the colors and modes available without having to open the case. You can hook up to 4 ARGB devices to it, and it's magnetic. What more could you want out of an ARGB control box? We're throwing a 125mm long power supply unit into this one, but you've got about 180mm of space with the drive cage in the furthest back position, which really puts your max power supply unit length to around 160, maybe 180 with it in the other one, as I said earlier. We've got a different test system than the usual going on for this video for a very specific reason. We'll get into that later. Just something new we're trying out. Main specs, we've got a 4670K at 1.36 volts and 4.3 GHz with an Arctic Freezer 34 cooler, 16 gigabytes of 2133 MHz DDR3 Kingston HyperX Beast, and a GTX 770 Gamewood Phantom, all mounted to a Z86 Asus Maximus Hero 6 board. Installing all of this was a simple process. Since it's so big, there aren't any major restrictions. Even typical pinch points like the top of the motherboard to the top of the case isn't really a problem due to the upper radiator compatibility. So with the system in place and all the cables managed, it's time for some testing. First up, we'll give some games a go, nothing too taxing. We're running the Destiny Skybox for 10 minutes to see where we stand on thermals and performance. The system is being tested both inside and outside of the case to represent the performance difference the restriction of the case provides. The difference standing at roughly 6 degrees hotter on the GPU and 4 degrees hotter on the CPU in this case, none of which caused a drop in GPU clock speed. Moving on to the Division 2, here we ran the in-game benchmark back-to-back 3 times at 1080p on the high preset. It's a small benchmark, so the differences are lesser. Only a couple of degrees difference for the GPU and a few for the CPU. No clock speed differences for the GPU here either. But now we can bring out the big guns, Priority 5 and Firmark, putting our system at full load for 10 minutes. With the front panel in various states to understand the limitations of the design, having the front panel completely open is similar to the test system, which makes sense. CPU temp wise, it would appear the filter isn't adding a lot of restriction to cooling since its performance is very close to the stock performance, but the aluminium front panel seems to be causing quite a lot of resistance judging by the sheer change in performance when it's removed, virtually the same as not having a front panel at all, or a case for that matter. GPU temp wise, it's a little different. There's not a huge difference when removing the aluminium plates, but still a noticeable difference when removing the panel entirely. Since the graphics card relies on the case fans to remove the surrounding hot air, perhaps those front intake fans are doing quite a lot to drive the air out of the case by themselves. Maybe the larger CPU performance differences we were seeing were down to the assistance from the CPU cooler's fans. And finally, clock speeds. Not a huge difference to see here either way. It's a big case, and contrary to the saying, it turns out the bigger they are, the harder it is for them to fall. Something like that. So we're just about to pop into about a 15-minute chit-chat between myself and Daniel. I'll explain the whole logistics of that afterwards and the different format of this video right at the end of the video. But this part of the video is pretty much only for people who are on the edge about this case and they want that little bit more sort of perspective on the case and opinions and stuff. For those of you who have made a solid decision whether you want to get it or not, this isn't going to sway you away or towards that. It's just going to be more clarification on a lot of the different parts of this case, which are either confusing, a little bit unclear, and that sort of stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. It's not super high quality, not super high resolution kind of stuff, and we do have to sort out audio for potential future parts of the video like this. I did try to cut it down as much as I could, but again, there are too many salient points that I wanted to remain for those of you who are on the edge. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you in a second. So there's probably a few questions you're asking, such as, why is the background completely different? Why are my hands different? That sort of stuff. And it's because it's not my background and they're not my hands. The main body of this video has been done by Daniel, otherwise known as The Sickness. You may have seen him in the comments on Discord. He chats to me an awful lot on Facebook with ideas and stuff for the channel. So say hello, Daniel.
Hey guys. Hey Alex.
We're going to go into the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess, about the case, and then at the end we'll do a bit more of an explanation as what's going on, why Daniel's doing this kind of stuff for the channel, and that kind of thing. So first point, I just want to, before we get into the niggling bits, the nitpicky kind of stuff, which people kind of despise, or some people despise on the channel, it's good performance, but you did touch on a good point there, Daniel, and that was you were doing some folding at home on this, since obviously the whole situation right now, you were doing some folding at home. What was the situation with that?
Well, in the basic testing, you guys saw the numbers. Looked fine. Gaming and stuff is fine. Holding at home, CPU and GPU get completely hammered.
Yeah.
And it's a Z87 board with like 120 watts on CPU power coming out. This GTX 770, I have no idea how much that is.
Yeah.
But it has its wattage, it's old. And I got to the situation where it was just overheating and shutting off. So folding at home, I had to take the side panel off. It was just too much both.
So you took the side panel off. Did you? You didn't take the front panel off, probably because it was easier to take the side panel off, I guess.
Yeah, at that moment, yeah.
So do you reckon that's something down to, because what was the result on the front panel? It was getting rid of was it the filter that was the main problem, or was it the front panel? What was the issue, the main bottleneck?
No, the between taking the filter out, running it like this basically, without the front panel was the best. There wasn't much of a difference between like having the filter in or taking the front panel completely off.
So maybe that front panel then is, perhaps that's a bottleneck that's really stopping these fans from doing their best work. There's about a third of the space of those fans is completely blocked off, and that's partly to do with the front panel design and its elegant sweeping look, and those ARGB strips there. So do you think there's a case for redesigning that front panel a little bit in order to maybe shift the strips around a bit and that sweeping panel to maybe utilize more space for the intake of those fans?
Well, if you want to kind of leave that sweeping look,
yeah,
you're kind of already cutting off like this much here.
Yeah.
What they could do is maybe open up some area around here, like these triangles a little bit, or redesign the whole middle section of the filter part.
Yeah.
But like this being punched in doesn't do much because there's no air coming in on these areas. So with the design it has, you don't really have much options.
Yeah.
Like, but looking at this, I guess the only thing they could have done differently is like go with 140 mils instead of 200.
Yeah,
maybe,
true.
because it would like basically perfectly fit in here.
Yeah, is there a huge benefit to throwing in a couple of 200 millimeter fans than throwing in a couple of 140s? I apart from acoustics, maybe so, because obviously you're working with much slower fans. But apart from that, maybe not. Maybe 140s are quite quiet. I mean, I've worked with, say, the Mastercase Pro 3 that had a 140 millimeter fan in the rear, and that thing was very quiet, and it was a very cheap fan as well. So, yeah, maybe 120s or maybe 200 millimeters wasn't perhaps the best solution, considering the rest of the case.
Yeah, considering the front panel design, maybe.
Let's move on to the back of the motherboard tray. Flip the thing around for us. You had an issue with the front I/O or the top I/O cables and their routing, which was causing a problem with the side panel, right?
Yeah, the issue was I didn't want the cables to run past a visible area from the front, so yeah. I had the option to kind of tuck them down to these points, but that's where your 24 pin and your GPU power is gonna be going.
Yeah.
So the only other option was to kind of tuck it farther forward, and there's only like one little hole here, and I kind of used a different little hole with a tiny zip tie to get those bunched up in there. Yeah. But that's so far forward, and the front panel kind of grips into the front here. It's a nice function of side panel closing. Yeah. But like if you put cables up there, you're kind of messing with it, and you have to kind of catch it without damaging any cables. But yeah, I didn't want to have it visible.
Yeah. So I think that comes really quickly and really easily onto the point that I think is the most defining point of why you perhaps wouldn't want to get this case, is the cost versus some of the quality features that you'd expect of a case at this price. So these cables had to be tucked so far forward in order to make it visually appealing, because there isn't any mechanism to stop you seeing through those grommets, or through those holes, right through to the back of the cable management area, such as some rubber grommets, which you typically see on any case above £60, I'd say, whereas this thing will cost you maybe €130, £110, $130 odd dollars kind of thing. You'd expect to see that kind of feature.
Yeah, I guess it would be a nice feature to have grommets on there, just from an aesthetic standpoint. And yeah, it's trying to be an aesthetic case. Like, yeah, look at the front panel with its aluminum and its glass on the other side, and ARGB. It would have been nice to at least like add these three. I don't know if you really need a fancy channeling system, like something you could put into these dimples here or something, because they're completely unused. Maybe they had something planned, some kind of cable management channel system. Other cases have it, but I guess the cost of the case is like a good part, probably the front panel. It's really thick aluminum. You have to do the tooling. You have to get it bent. You have to do the different facial.
No, there are a lot of processes that have gone into there, because you've got to either extrude it or form it somehow. You've got to do all of the brushing and the finishing of that, and you also have to cut those fillets in, essentially. So there's a lot of processes that have gone into that one panel just to make it work. And like you said before, you have to fix it somehow. So you've got to have some mounting capability to either accept screws or have some cleats on them or something in order to fix it to your case. So maybe a lot of the money that was spent on that, there wasn't anything left over to even... I'm very certain that SilverStone have got cases which have grommets in them already, and for you to just cut similar holes in and reuse grommets from another factory process. Yeah,
but I guess it's just like easy cost saving. They already spent the money on the tooling of the front. You have really thick glass.
Yeah.
Like you have 4 millimeters of glass.
Yeah.
Like my Evolve over there has 3.2. It doesn't sound much, but it is. Like when you have it like head to head, it's noticeable.
I mean, it's like nearly a 25% difference between the two of them, But here's the thing that I'm thinking, based on what we've been discussing now, and it's just a new thought that occurred to me. Maybe that this case would have been better off, or this kind of style of case would have been better off designed as a micro ATX case, or maybe even something smaller, so that you can reduce the amount of material you're using, charge something around that price, but also maybe put a little bit of that money saving from the material costs back into putting some grommets in, and maybe reducing costs in a lot of areas by reducing the size of it, and then you can experiment with this stuff. Because I think making it this big, it's caused problems of quality in lots of areas. Quickly moving on to the back of that front panel with the ARGB strips. They're hot glued in place, and I don't think at this cost hot gluing is really acceptable. I mean, at least a screw of some kind or a good clip that's been designed into the system would be more appropriate.
Yeah, plus like tethering the front.
Oh, that's heresy as far as I'm concerned.
Took it off, I was like, nah, come on.
Yeah.
Like, it's 2020. There's enough people doing like push pin style connectors on there. I mean,
so even the MB 311L from Cooler Master I just did a video on. The I/O is mounted separate of the front panel to the chassis. So when you remove the front panel, the I/O is left behind. So you haven't got that stuff. I mean,
that's the sad part about it, because like your I/O is up here.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the front.
Yeah.
It's dangling through here, but it's like the 8 RGB cable.
Yeah.
It's just kind of left over there. So if you put your 8 RGB connected to the motherboard, you're laying it through, and you're cable managing it. Yeah, that thing's in there.
Yeah, it can come off a bit like a door hinge, right? But it's still tethered to it.
So yeah, being it can like move over like this is okay. But the problem I have with the aluminum on the front, the edges are not sharp to like cut yourself, but there's an edge on it.
Yeah.
And like this is dangling, and you have aluminum hanging here. You don't have any wire length. If this thing kind of moves around on your desk, I scuffed it up. I already scuffed up my surface here. It's RGB cables.
Because they're mounted to the front panel, not the chassis. Let's say accidents happen, and I think, like, I work in like construction kind of thing, in design of buildings and stuff. You try and design accidents out. You don't design things that accidents can happen. So with that aluminium panel attached to that front panel, there's a fair amount of weight to it, I can imagine. If those very small cables being tethered to it, if the front panel accidentally slipped off your desk for some reason, you could probably pull on those cables and it might might damage something, you know, and that would be a shame.
That's kind of how the nicks got into into my surface, because I tried to lean it on the side,
Yeah,
but like the weight is on the outside here.
yeah,
You lean it to the case on this side because you're tethered,
yeah,
so it kind of slips
yeah.
because it's still kind of connected, and it just like
Scuffs your desk up. Yeah. So, is that an advert for a Gamers Nexus mod, Matt, or?
If they give you money for it, you can put one in, I
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, yeah. But no, some sort of work surface. I mean, I had the same situation when I had the Fantex N through Evolve Micro ATX case. That aluminium on there, when I was filling it with water and rolling it around and stuff, the aluminium did cut into the mat I had on my desk. So yeah, it's just something you got to think about maybe when working with aluminium and sharp edges. So last thing on my list is that there is a lot of space in this case where it's just flat sheet metal, not a lot of use going on for that metal. There's not anything to do with 2.5-inch drive slots and that kind of thing. There don't seem to be that many cable management loops, or there's not a cable management shaft or anything like that, and that's dedicated. So I mean, you can see at the front of that case, in front of the case there, and I'll add a shot in as well, that there's a lot of nothingness. And again, kind of shouts to me that maybe they should have tried going with a smaller version of this case first.
Yeah, well, a smaller version would be okay. Would be nice probably if they could cut it down to like, I don't know, an ITX with 200 mil in the front.
Yeah.
Cooler mat. Tried something like that and failed.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, we've also always got the Thermaltake Core V21, and that's an ITX case that does a really good job. It's quite popular, so they could have had an elegant take on that for maybe a living room computer thing. But I mean, yeah, something like that, you know.
You could put a radiator and fans in here, kind of fill up this area, but you got the 200 mil fans in the front, and there's no real point in tossing those out. SSD mounts, yeah, something could have been done in front of here to kind of give it some purpose.
Yeah, I think that kind of amount of space, it kind of, to me, it calls to be water cooled, even though it's got the one, and that's again, it is kind of a problem because they've added in 200mm fans. They've kind of hamstrung you there to they either stick with them or you have to get rid of them and replace them for something. I think maybe if they threw in 140mm fans, even 120s, it's a big case, 140s would be more reasonable, then you could throw a 280mm radiator in there and make use of them. But as it stands, I mean, yeah, if you're air cooling, there's no reason to get rid of those fans and you have a huge amount of space in the front that's useless. And if you're water cooling, you got to get rid of the 200mm fans because, I mean, there's not room for a 200mm radiator unless you can squeeze one in the inside there. But in all honesty, it would probably look strange and it wouldn't be made use of because of the static pressure of the fans. So you'd probably need to get one of the EK 200mm fans, which look quite fancy, to be honest. I quite like the look of those. But anyway, I personally think this case design would have been better suited, like I said a million times already, to ITX. Like what was it? Cooler Master. They put a 200mm fan in the front of an ITX case, and you could do a blend between the Core V21 and whatever that Cooler Master case was, and have something really interesting at the ITX level. So, from your perspective then, Daniel, what would you recommend this case, considering its price and the market out there? What other things are available? Would you recommend this?
Well, that's actually a tough one because if you're looking at the design, there's like you said, there's no other case out there that looks quite like it, has this type of front panel.
Yeah.
So if you like the design, you're kind of stuck. For the price to performance, I'd like to see it a bit cheaper.
So basically, it's kind of the elements that they've put in that cost a lot that bring it up to that price have shifted it so high in the expense that the price to performance just gets lost, and it's hard to recommend over something else. Would you recommend this over the O11 Dynamic? Would you recommend this over the Neo Cube? I mean, it's a tough one to say. The build quality just isn't there, I don't think.
Yeah, you're not like in a price to performance category. This is like a price to design category.
Yeah, it's in a different category. Yeah. Yeah.
If you like the design and want to have the aluminum and it would fit your kind of desk setup and whatnot, it's okay. You can use it. It's a usable case. It it doesn't do anything terrible to you. Yeah.
It kind of feels like a very trying to avoid the terrible situation we have here. It's like, it's a usable case. Well, for $130 or 130 euros, I bloody well hope it would be usable, you know? So yeah, it's
There's case manufacturers out there. They make cases that are more expensive, and you could basically you can't use them because
well, that's true,
they're
yeah.
absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So it's good. The design is nice if you like it. The price is just a bit over my point I would pay for it.
Yeah, I'd
actually.
say if this case was brought down to a price of, I'd say £80, I would be comfortable paying £80 for that. I think more than that, and I know that's a lot lower than it's being marketed at, but I think more than that, there's just too many really nice cases on the market for it to compete with. Bottom line, it comes down to, if the look is what you're after and you want something that's good enough to build a computer in, then that's your case. But if you're looking for something that's going to be quality, like, you know, quality competitive at this price point, then it's not here. And if you're looking at something that perhaps, I guess that's the only really, I kind of screwed my own sentence up there. Because like I'm trying to think of like another reason why you wouldn't buy it, but it just seems the quality. That's it.
Well, the thing is, if you go onto a website and you filter cases by this price point and just kind of compare what's there, you really have to like the design.
Yeah. There's a lot of analogies that can be sprung from that. So I hope that rather long conversation helped those of you who are on the fence about whether you wanted to or didn't want to get this case. If it did, please leave a comment and maybe some constructive criticism, some feedback about the format overall. Speaking of which, if you want to know why we're doing this and a bit more about it, then stick around in a second for a few minutes of a bit more chit chat about the format itself, not about the case. But yeah, for those of you who are tuning out now because you've seen all you want to see about the case, thanks for checking this one out. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to, and otherwise I'll catch you in a second for the reasoning behind this. What I want to get onto now is that if you're here for the case review and that kind of stuff, that's ended. It's over. But if you want to see more from this case, then stick around. So the whole point of doing this was, well, Daniel wanted to take a little bit of the load off my shoulders, so he said, can we do something where he can get involved, send some stuff over to me where a lot of the process has been taken out of my hands, so that all I need to do is do a minimal thing like script, edit, narrate, that kind of stuff, and then we can do something like this to save on time, so I can get maybe one video or spend some time doing longer videos or what have you. So the second part to this is that Daniel, since he did the first recording stuff, which was a while back, has taken the front panel off and has basically he's destroyed it. No, he's done a lot of work to it, and he's changed a lot of elements to try and address some of those performance concerns with the really heavy performance kind of stuff, and also put a little bit of a spin on it in terms of the design of that front panel. I think a little bit more work than you wanted to put into this was put into this, but
yeah, I kind of got myself on that one.
Yeah, it went a bit out of control. Yeah, so we'll discuss more.
That's usually how it goes. I kind of have a kind of vision in my head, and it just evolves in the process.
This stuff gets out of hand.
Yeah, sometimes too. Yeah.
So in the second part of this video, we're going to be basically giving a little bit of a sort of a walkthrough of an idea that Daniel had for this case, such as changing the front panel to maybe perform a little bit better, addressing the cable management exposure kind of situation that he was struggling with that side panel, and then bringing some more of, well, to a certain degree, I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say, bringing some of the SilverStone theme into it in a different way. But I think we'll leave it at that to not spoil too much on that one. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks a huge amount to Daniel for taking such a load off my back so I can actually get on with making videos for you guys. Again, this is all off his own back. It's something he brought up, and yeah, it's hugely appreciated on my part, and I can imagine a huge amount of you guys are quite appreciative, because this is more coverage of other stuff We will, yes, we will try and cut down on the length of things in the future. It's a tradition for the channel, and we couldn't get rid of it for the first episode, I think. So we will cut this down in the future, but anyway, again, huge thank you to you, Daniel. And let's not forget a huge thank you to SilverStone, who took a gamble on this one with sending us a case, or sending a case over to Daniel to do the review and us to do it in a different format. Now, obviously, this review wasn't glowingly positive, but we are doing this in a really strong attempt to try and help develop these ideas and designs into something that is maybe a little cheaper and in a maybe a different angle, so that it makes it a little bit more affordable, more attractive to more people. But of course, if you have any ideas that you want to add to everything, please put them down in the comments. And yeah, if you like the video, please give it a like, subscribe, support the channel in any way you fancy, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the modding. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.